As we begin a new year, are you thinking of making some life changes? What would provide you a sense of accomplishment? I, for one, wish to take my wellness journey to a new level. Doing this podcast has provided me so much in the way of information and motivation to up my own fitness game. I am not only going to do dry January, but I will rebound from the holiday overindulgence and get back to eating whole foods and prioritizing my strength training and also sleep. But what about you? New Year's resolutions look differently to everyone. Maybe you want to improve your own health. Perhaps you wish to work on your relationship and improve communication. Has your mindset or past experiences been holding you back, keeping you from claiming the life you want? This month, we have many inspiring guests that will give you a kick in the pants and inspire us all to great things, and I can't wait. Health, wellness, career, relationships, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. There are many wonderful things about midlife to celebrate, but vaginal dryness is not on that list. Add relief to your routine like I did with Reverie from Bonafide Health. Reverie is naturally powered with hyaluronic acid and scientifically validated to rejuvenate vaginal tissue and replenish moisture. No mess, no stress. Go to hellobonafide.com and use code AFAF25 at checkout to receive 25% off your subscription for any of Bonafide's sexual health and wellness products. You deserve lasting comfort, so check out Reverie at hellobonafide.com. Welcome to the show, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is our first show of 2023. I'm really excited to have you all here. You are all going to get a big dose of motivation today and learn some very practical tips to get your New Year fitness journey off on the right foot. Because today's guest is dedicated to helping midlife women reach their health and fitness goals. And Debra Atkinson takes into account her clients' lifestyle, hormonal needs, goals, stress, and any past injuries or conditions. And not only does she have a super successful online health coaching platform, Debra also does a podcast called The Flipping 50 Show. She also offers coaching for other health and wellness professionals. And to top that off, she is a 2-time best-selling author and was a speaker for a TEDx talk. Wow. Debra, you have been super busy, and I have to say I am so excited to have you here and very fortunate that you were able to squeeze me in. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, and I love the title of this show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I have been really pleased that the listeners will submit questions, and I think that's brave. That's been kind of a fun little spin with this podcast. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I always start each show, Debra, with a little bit about you and your story, like where you're from, your family, and all that good stuff.
Well, I'm an Iowa girl. Shout out to all the Midwesterners out there. Grew up loyal to Iowa State University. Ended up going there to college, ended up coming back for some more college, and then ended up being asked to stay and teach for 15 years after that. I bleed cardinal and gold, and just to be clear, that is not the Hawkeyes, anybody who's wondering. The question I think that comes up for me a lot is why menopause, why women in midlife and fitness, because there's a lot of people who need fitness, and there are ways that we can deliver it. The reason is I was the youngest of a family where my mom was a little older already when she had me at a time when that wasn't actually normal. She was 38 and my sister was 16, and the rumor has it that everybody assumed I was my sister's child. My mom was mortified, I'm sure. But I spent my life around older adults a lot. My mom ended up marrying somebody 10 years her senior. My parents actually hung out with most of my friends' grandparents as I was growing up.
Oh, wow.
conservative and older, they drag you along. I had a lot of Shirley Temples on Saturday nights listening to older adult conversations. Little did I know I was doing research. I was very comfortable with older adults. And by the time I got to my undergrad and had to do all of the exercise clinic experiences, I was given the alumni faculty members, the retired faculty, the older people.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it, and so did they. Since I was 22, I was really working primarily with middle life and older adults, not realizing this was going somewhere at some point. When I was 49, I had felt just this itch. I felt like I could be doing more. I could be really comfortable staying where I was and doing what I was doing. I loved it, but I felt there's just this thing. And my son was in his freshman year of college. They frown on parents going to college with their kids. That's just, I was like, he's got a life, I need to get one. And
they make movies about that, Debra.
I know. It's now or I'm just going to stay here. I've got to go. I quit my job, quit at the university. I quit working at the private gyms I was working at. And I said, I'm doing this. Cut off all the umbilical cords, and there weren't checks coming in. It had to work, and it was a struggle for a couple of years. I ended up 11 months later putting my house up for sale, moving 2 states away, everything still in the middle of my house in cardboard boxes. It wasn't even under contract. When I think about it, I was like, did I really do that? That didn't happen to me, did it? I mean, I pawned jewelry. I wasn't raised by a family who pawns jewelry. This was like a lot of things happened in this year. Then I realized the kind of stress and the midlife changes, and I was actually in the thick of it. I realized, okay, wait, I can't just quit and do what I want to do, which is coach health and fitness professionals to build their business, because I had seen working at a university, we lose the good ones because they get out in the world and they can't sell and market themselves. And we lose the 4.0 students who have a great heart because they just are convinced they can't make a living at this. This has to stop. We need to elevate the fitness industry. That's really what I wanted to do, and realized I have to continue training consumers to be an example for them of this is how you do it. I was the perfect example because I gutted it and started from zero. A little scary at 49. That's not what you see for yourself, right? That's not the convertible or the corner office.
What a midlife pivot. I mean, you took a huge risk. That's something else that we do talk about on this show a lot, is people that totally step out of their comfort zone and build something. It's scary, but it's also so incredibly rewarding.
I think we've had crazy success, and I'm grateful and thankful for all the women that I've been able to help and that trusted me to help them. Yet I look back and I think before I had to do it, if I hadn't have made it that I needed to, I had to, there was no question. I'm not sure I would have done it. I think you always hold back when you know I have a net. When I was married, I had a family. I didn't need to. And so it was really just a hobby, as much as I liked to call that side hustle a business. It really wasn't. No bank would have given that business a loan. So that's a pretty good way to say.
So you had to make it work.
I had to make it work. I remember distinctly, I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and I drove the 10 hours in tears. I didn't want to move. I loved my life. First morning at this new health club that was going to be my home gym, because I'd never for 35 years not had one, not had 4 with the keys in my pocket so I could walk into. It was the first place I was like, well, I have to have a gym, but I don't know what else I'm going to do, but I got to have a gym. I was there and I met someone in the sauna, literally naked, which is totally Boulder, but, and she said something to me and just met. And 5 years later, she looked at me, and we were the only 2 in the locker room. And this day we were both dressed, by the way, but she said, you made it. You're still here. I remember when you first got here and what you said you were going to be doing. She said, I wouldn't have wanted to be in those footsteps. And I'm like, my chin was dropping on the floor because I was thinking, well, it had to work. there wasn't any alternative. Wait a minute, come back. I want to finish the story.
Yeah.
It was just a realization like somebody else looking at me who thought, I don't know how she's going to do this, right?
What was the progression here? You started the coaching business. Mm-hmm. When did you decide to branch off into writing and then doing podcasts? How did all that play out?
Great question. I've been writing content since I was 22. Poorly. I've been writing since then. I can remember sending stacks, and this is, of course, when we still had to print everything, and I sent stacks of my articles to an editor of the Ames Tribune, and I'm sure he kept them for years, and it was a good laugh in the office because I portrayed myself as if I was an expert, and I was 22, fresh out of college, quoting nobody, quoting no research, just myself. Oh my gosh. Did I really do that?
It's ballsy.
I've been writing forever, wrote for publications throughout my career, the blogs and the podcast. I'm a serial content creator. I love to try and solve a problem and give it to somebody with, here's the science, but here's what that means in a practical term. When you go exercise today, here's the change that you might want to consider making. That's always been a part. And podcasts, I think just in 2013 and 14, when both of the podcasts were born, I just realized that was a better way to have somebody hear my voice and maybe hear authenticity and who I am, and either decide I could listen to this person or heck no, I could never listen to her. She's like fingernails on the chalkboard. Oh. Either way, it saves us both a lot of time.
It's nice because people are audible. They like to hear you. Mm-hmm. You're pretty prolific on social media in a good way because showing people how to do it builds confidence. They want to know they're doing these exercises right. Mm-hmm. Kudos on both ends there.
Thank you.
When did you do the TEDx talk?
The TEDx I did the November before the pandemic started. That was in a crunch of a year for me as well. I hit menopause, and I think about May. I hosted a retreat in May, or in June actually it was, and I had had a septic tank overflow the Christmas prior. My house had been mitigated for mold, and I was renting it. But for 6 months, I'd been exposed to mold. And after they were done mitigating, supposedly, I kept getting sick. So I tested it, still mold. And the landlord said, no, I've spent enough money. I think you should move because I'm not doing anything more. I did, and I had to move in 3 weeks, find something. In 5 weeks, I was moving. I finished the retreat hosting at noon. Got home at 12:30 to meet the packers for the U-Haul truck. I left the next day with my old English sheepdog in the car. I mean, it was like boom, boom, boom. Very stressful. The year I was training for an Ironman. 3 weeks before the Ironman, I gave the TEDx talk. 5 weeks before I got the invitation to do the TEDx, I had very short time to give it. It's one of those things. I had to get ready. You don't say no if TED calls, you just say yes, and then I'll figure it out after that. Again, lots and lots of stress, but I needed that message to get out. It got caught in the pandemic, though it didn't get released until the May after. It was like it was in pandemic jail because they couldn't edit it, and then TED was shut down. They didn't release anything because they weren't hosting live events. It came out in 2020. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
A good friend of mine who has been a guest on the show, she said it was one of the most stressful things that she has ever done because it's just the preparation and you can't use notes. Mm-hmm. Well, good. Good for you. I wanted to get into the meat of things here because it's the new year. Mm-hmm. We all come to the table with maybe some New Year's resolutions. Fitness always seems to be on the top of the list. Midlife brings with it some different challenges. Probably the biggest one is it's that balance between losing weight and keeping your muscle. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that dynamic? Why is that in menopause, the muscle building is so much top of mind for people?
We go through during menopause. We, of course, men don't. And we have a dozen or more hormones that behave badly during menopause. Men don't. I mean, it's just totally unfair if we're really going to get to it. But that's a whole nother show. During the end of that perimenopause, right, the lead up to literally menopause, that last couple of years and the first couple of years of postmenopause, we have accelerated loss of muscle and bone because of the dramatic change that happens right then when, for us, we go up to the edge of a cliff and we actually jump. Estrogen just takes a nosedive like that. Guys, it doesn't happen at 50, it happens closer to 60, and they just more or less taper down for a landing like a plane. It does come down, but not like, boom, here you go. Deal with this. You know, that's kind of what women get. And every woman's journey is different, but we know that accelerated losses happen then because estrogen comes down and cortisol goes up. And estrogen is what we call an anabolic hormone, meaning it helps you preserve the muscle you have and it helps you, if you're doing the right things, gain muscle too. And cortisol is by default, it's higher after estrogen goes down simply because it's your body's way of trying to be balanced. And it says, well, we'll just have more cortisol. We'll convert that to estrogen, which it happens very poorly, 10% of it, but we still have the cortisol damage around. And that's catabolic. It breaks down our muscle. So we're not getting any favors there. Cortisol also makes us more likely to store fat. It's like double whammy.
Extra important then to manage your stress, correct?
Yes.
Because we produce more cortisol when we're under stress.
We already have one thing happen by nature. And then if we just ignore it and continue to go about life as we've always gone about life, it won't work.
Okay.
We don't have the same resilience level that we did.
It also makes a good argument for getting sleep.
If we have one night of sleep deprivation, the next day cortisol levels are wonky and they're not good. Whatever's in the break room is going to start looking really good to you. You know, it's not good. And that day, you're probably less likely to want to work out. So you're not going to want to inspire any more muscle, and the stress level is continuing to help you burn fat or want to store fat. And you're going to want the foods that also help you store fat more. It's just terrible domino effect.
Absolutely. I won't tell you what I ate this afternoon when I was out shopping.
Maybe you should tell me how you slept last night. Is that what you're telling me?
I probably didn't sleep very well last night. I ate a donut this afternoon because I had to go to the bakery to get some stuff for Christmas.
Well, I'm not a priest.
I know.
That's okay.
It was a moment of weakness, but it was delicious. A lot of people may be a little intimidated by the idea of lifting weights. And if you've never done it before, how do you get started safely and build from there?
Great question. Really, I think instruction is number one. I think shooting a bunch of questions, I suppose, back to listeners is the best way. How do you learn best and what are you more comfortable doing? The idea of putting on yoga pants and going out in public or going to the gym is terrifying and something you don't want to do, then let's find something online, something that the tone of voice, the rate of speech, the rate of progression that you feel I can keep up. This is the right pace. This works for me. If it is going to the gym and you feel like I need more eyes on me, and maybe if you have a special condition, I would suggest that would probably be the wisest thing to do. When I say special condition, so many of us do. I mean, we're all a little bit special, right?
Yeah.
But if you have, say, rheumatoid arthritis or a chronic condition like fibromyalgia, you have something, or you're bone on bone and you are not ready to consider knee or joint replacement yet, but you do want to exercise in the best way you can, you want to make sure you're not compromising movement elsewhere in your body to accommodate that, and having some eyes on you, at least at first, so that you know how I modify going forward would be a wise thing to do. Sometimes also choosing or looking for a medical exercise specialist, which is a little bit beyond personal trainer. So starting there. And then what you're looking for once you've decided where am I getting that instruction, you start light. You start with one set and you do light weights, one set of most exercises for a few weeks, just a couple times a week, and make sure your muscles and your joints and your ligaments are all just, I'm okay with this, no problems. So now I'm going to do 2 sets. And the whole process really takes, and should, a couple of months to actually build up. So we think in terms of 1 set, very light, maybe 2 sets, now very light. How am I adapting? Maybe those 2 sets getting a little heavier, not quite as many repetitions. Then we're going to work to 3 sets. We'll hang there for a couple of weeks. Then we'll increase the weight again. So there's only one change at a time. And if you think back to 7th grade, that was science, right? You change one variable at a time if you're going to be able to figure out what happened and why. And that's what we want to be able to do. If you progress like that, there's very low risk of injury because you can always step back. You just took a small step forward.
I think that's fabulous. You did a video on Instagram where you were doing a lot of impact exercises, jumping, purposeful, coming down on your heels, that type of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's important?
Absolutely. I think that one that you're referring to is about bone density. It was from a study. So what I was doing is just taking out the ground force activities that were ranked in a particular study, looking at benefits of bone density. So when we say ground forces, you and I could dance in the living room, and there are certain ground forces just because we pick our feet up and we put them back down again. And then we could say, okay, well, if we hopped or we jumped, there's going to be more ground force. We can step up and step down. And lots of listeners maybe are familiar with step aerobics. Either they did it or they've seen it before. That's a certain ground force. I could stand on the floor and I could jump onto that step, or I could stand on the box and jump down to the floor. And all through that, I'm talking about from least to greater and greater and greater stress. And if your body tolerates it, the bone density benefit is going to be greatest with that highest impact or highest ground force. And for all of us in doing any of those, we may get to, oh, that's my limiter. Here's my threshold. Safely I can do these. After that, my knee starts to hurt, or this isn't good for me, or I felt it in my lower back. We're all looking for where's that sweet spot. But for bone density benefit, in that case, strength training is one of the ways that you actually impact positively your bone density. And the other is what we call weight-bearing exercise, including walking and dancing and jumping and hopping. That's what we want. And ideally, we do these 4 to 7 days a week. We do repetitions of about 20 to 40 repetitions of them, jumping in place, just 20 repetitions and stop. And if you do that, it takes 5 seconds. So it's very short. And you do 3 to 5 sets of that. And that is one of the recommendations for bone density. It's that ground force. It comes through your heel. It's going to have a little effect at your knee, a little effect at your hip. It's going to have lesser effect on the joints upstairs than it does right on your lower body in terms of helping your spines, probably not helping as much. It's helping throughout systemically your body and your bones, but we really need to be paying attention to that too.
Walking does help, but
Walking helps to a certain extent. We need to have what we call minimum effective stress. So MES is what it's referred to. If you can walk a mile and you're on your feet all the day and you're mobile and moving around, walking 3 miles is not better than walking 1 in terms of bone density because your weight stayed the same. The impact to your body had already adapted to that. Similarly, if you're a jogger, if you jog 10 miles versus 3, it's no real better for your bone. You already were accommodated to that stress. It would be more if you then jumped rope, because you're going to into that ground just a little bit harder, a little bit more.
That's great advice. I think about our mothers. My mom, if she were still here, she would be 91. They didn't do, my mom would do some yoga. Mm. Later in life, she'd ride an exercise bike or walk on a treadmill. But if you look at women today, mm-hmm. we're way ahead in regard to our fitness level. But we're also living longer. I think about now, since we are living longer, we want to still be active. We don't want to be sitting in a recliner with the remote in our hands watching Price is Right. This is just great advice to be proactive.
I love that. And I think you said we're way ahead. We're winning. And that's, I think, why, though, it's a challenge for those women maybe who aren't doing anything regularly yet to get started. A small slice, let's say maybe 5% of the population that we've seen is still doing it in their 80s and their 90s. And yet we have them. I've trained for 8 Ironman triathlon. It's one of the best communities to be in. And when you go, it's just a slice of pie of anywhere. You wouldn't know you weren't just at a family reunion. At all sizes.
Oh, yeah.
Both genders, all ethnicities. It's everything. And yet there are now women and men in their 80s with age groups. At some point, there was never a 70-year-old age group. At some point, there was never an 80. And there is. In 10 years, we will probably have a 90-year-old age group. For Ironman triathlons, they give you 17 hours. This is a long thing. This is a real test. And I'm not recommending this is a great health thing, by the way. It's an extreme. But to hear stories, what it shows us is what the human body is capable of for anybody. These are ordinary people. These were pro athletes. And so, of course, it must be genetic or something. It's not that. And many of these people barely make it to the finish line at midnight. And some don't, but continue to go anyway, because it's a life that they love and it's feeling alive that it gives them. I think our look ahead at what's possible for us, we have to have a really good imagination because we don't have many examples right now.
I totally agree. Speaking of that, what mistakes are women making that thwart exercise benefits?
Probably lifting too light when it comes to strength training. I think we have a growing number of women warming up to the idea and understanding that the research is really clear. If you can lift heavy. It's the best. And we talked a little bit about limits. We'll reach an upper limit where a prior injury, maybe arthritis, something else is limiting you, and that's preventing you. But often it's limiting you at one joint, not all joints. You don't want to just give yourself that get out of jail card. I think we have to look at what we can do, but lifting heavy versus light, I think that's one of the biggest errors. There's still a very heavy emphasis on what's gender specific. A lot of women are still, I like yoga, I like Pilates, or I like bar classes. There's nothing wrong with them. By the way, I don't discriminate. I'm a registered yoga instructor. I'm a certified Pilates instructor. And they're wonderful, but they need to be a fraction of what we do. And we have to make sure we get the strength training and prioritize it. Because I think we all need to prioritize what are our biggest goals. You could start with what you want aging to look like for you. What do you want 80 to look like? What do you want 90 to look like? What do you want to be doing then? Well, you're probably going to need bone and muscle to do it, and maybe some brain power. What's the exercise that's going to be most directly in alignment with you getting those things? And if you start like that, then there's room to do all the things you like too, if they're not on that high priority list. But I think you don't want to skip them and be 10 years down the road and say, oh gosh, I wish I would have started this 10 years ago.
Are we doing too much cardio?
Yes and no. we have to be careful who we talk to. I think I spend time now talking to people who are switching over, who see the value of, oh my gosh, I'm not doing as much cardio and I'm not as tired. I'm actually losing weight easier. It's easy to convert when you have that experience, but it's hard to let go. Ride the bicycle there when you're not used to that territory. But we still do a lot of cardio or just even a lot of walking. Walking seems to be something everybody did a little bit more of during the pandemic. I think we liked to be outside, even if just a wave across the street at people, it was social for a minute there. But we're walking so much of the time. If we could just forfeit a little bit of that and say, okay, it is wonderful. It is. Combine it with strength training. Give up a little bit of that walking time and do the strength training too, and you'll be so much more fit and have so much more longevity because of it.
I am a reformed cardio junkie.
Yeah. You're a woman with a heartbeat. Yes.
I'm figuring it out. You talk a lot about core strength. I really want to get into that. And I think your yoga and Pilates background speaks to the core strength. How do we vary that beyond just doing crunches?
Oh, don't say that word here again, okay? We're going to have to hang up and really stop it. I think the saying goes, and I wish I had said this. I think I said it, but I didn't coin this term. I interviewed a gentleman who'd written a book, Crunches Are Stupid, or Crunches Are Stupid, Sit-Ups Are Dumb, something like that. And I was like, brilliant. Yes, it's true. So forward flexion, we're already good at. Freeze where you are right now if you're listening. And unless you're probably walking and listening to us, you're probably sitting and your legs, thighs to your torso are at a 90-degree angle. We're already in forward flexion most of the time. We really need extension, stabilization. That's what our core does every day, all day. So we need to focus on those things. The other thing that's gotten tired lately that 20 years ago when it was first born was just the magic, but planks, there's more to life than planks, okay? I promise you. There's 5 movements your core muscles perform. Stabilization, that's the one that we're sitting all day, but we're rotating, we're moving, we're reaching down for our pencil that dropped on the floor. All of that is stabilization, really. We rotate. So first thing you do when you get up in the morning, you roll over and get out of bed. You rotate and then you turn and probably rotate again. And we do it all day, every day as well. We do lateral flexion, so just reaching down to the floor and your side. We generally don't train for that unless you're being really thoughtful about that every time. We don't do it. Back extension, we need more of that. Otherwise, we're becoming our parents, y'all. Shoulder blades back and down, and love to my mom, but
oh yeah,
you see an older adult, you immediately think that, and if you catch yourself walking by a window, it's like, who is that? Gosh, stand up. Oh, what did I hit? I hit stabilization. Well, and then forward flexion is the last one. But rarely in life, think about it, in your daily activities of life, today, when have you needed to do forward flexion against resistance? We do it, if we do, with resistance. We're doing it with the force of gravity. We do the extension against gravity. And yet that's how we've been training for decades. Forward flexion with resistance. How bizarre is that?
Yeah.
We've just not thought about that. But if anybody's going to make changes slowly, it's the government. Sorry, said that. But the Army 20 years ago finally said, we're not going to use sit-ups anymore as a test. I don't know if they use them still in training or not, but they realized they were causing back problems. And so they stopped. And that's big. That's a statement. The pressure on your cervical spine, in your neck, and your lower back or the lumbar spine when you're doing crunches and sit-ups is just not desirable. There are a few ways you could modify to make that a little bit better, but the real point is When do we need that forward flexion? We're already really good at it. We're rounded over all the time. So we need the extension, we need the rotation, we need the things that make us feel better and get more oxygen into our lungs. But there's tons of things we really want to do. If you want to do one with me right here, if you're sitting or standing, do this. Splay your fingers open, like wide open like a duck, and put them on the bottom of your ribs and the top of your pelvis, like your hip bones. And then just take a deep breath in and feel that expand down there, not up and down, hollow and shallow in your shoulders, but deep breath in, really big. And then I want you to blow out through a straw. Purse your lips and just keep blowing all that out, and blow all of it out till you're uncomfortable. You're going to keep blowing out, keep blowing out, keep blowing out, keep blowing out, keep blowing out. And you should feel your abdominals contracting right now. Your diaphragm is helping you push it out. And if you freeze those muscles, if you could do that, you can feel what we call the transversus abdominis. It's a group of muscles that it wraps around your waist like a belt. It's your personal girdle. It's either on or it's not. For most of us, it's not. It wasn't before. But if you wanted to right now, I'm holding mine. And I wasn't before either, but I'm talking and breathing. We sometimes feel like, okay, if I'm going to hold some muscle, then I'm holding my breath too. But you get to the point that you can hold and brace. And that's what we've always really wanted to do. But what we've been cueing guilty as fitness instructors for decades is suck your belly to your spine, hollow it out, draw that in. And the irony is when we do that, we weaken the muscles, the ones that we're really trying to strengthen. So it's learning how to brace, not to hollow, is so much more beneficial. If you just stand face to face with somebody and put your palms up against them and push against each other, you're bracing in order not to fall backward while you're doing that. Just getting used to what is bracing. You can do bracing in your car. You can do bracing sitting in your office. You can do bracing standing in the line at the bank or the grocery store. And that kind of activity, just being able to turn your muscles on and let them go off again, very effective.
I will tell you, I was having low back pain a few years ago. I went to a chiropractor and he put me through exercises like that, and it has changed my life. He basically said, if I'm going to bend over to pick something up, I brace my stomach as if someone's going to punch me in the gut, not suck in my gut.
Yes.
Just being more aware of that has been amazing. Just amazing.
80% of all adults in the United States alone suffers from some kind of a back pain or back injury during their life. The other cure for that, by the way, is a strong butt. Work on your glutes.
I'm doing these things. I swear. I have made so many changes in how I work out. I'm telling you. I want to talk a little bit about food, because this also is part of our New Year's resolutions many times.
Of course.
It's the working out, getting fit, and eating better. What are your thoughts around keto and intermittent fasting, counting macros? What do you do?
How much time do we have?
You keep talking. I'll cut you off if you get too windy.
Oh my goodness, that's a whole can of worms. Okay. I'm probably going to make some friends and some enemies in these next few minutes here. Thoughts on keto. I think that there's no blanket statement like everything is great for everybody or everything is terrible for everybody. It depends on who you are and what's going on for you in the moment that you're in right now. But I do think keto on a short-term basis for a lot of women in midlife can be very helpful. Women do become more insulin resistant. Even those women who I've always been conscientious, I've always eaten healthy, I've always exercised, it feels like an insult when they hear those words at their doctor's office. You're pre-diabetic. And they're like, what? You must be incorrect. But it's true. And that's where keto can come in. As long as it's not no carb, it's lower carb. It's also, for those of you who are listening who are active, very active, exercise enthusiasts, If you go too low on carbohydrates, it's actually called low energy availability. You're putting your body into stress. Your body under stress stores fat, does not burn fat. It can't do two equal and opposite things, and it chooses the one that's going to protect your life, which is storing fat, because it doesn't know the refrigerator's 10 feet away. It thinks you're starving. The more you stress yourself, the body dieting, the body exercising, the mental and emotional things of every day, all day at midlife, all of it collectively, your body doesn't separate and silo. It just puts them together in a backpack you're carrying around. If you take that too far or do it for too long, maybe you do keto for 5 days at a time and then come back off, and you do it every month or two, you may find some benefit for that, and you'll know. But that's where we get carried away. I think it's hard for women once we're like, this is working, I'm losing weight. We don't want to stop it and see the value of just cycling through it. That's where we sometimes get in trouble. Similarly with fasting, it's for longevity and mitochondria benefit, mitochondria being our energy production place in our bodies. I mean, it's how we create ATP that gives us the energy, just not just for exercise, but to live, not to get breathless doing easy, small things. It's great. However, I think you just want to be careful. And if you're combining with exercise, I would always recommend to exercise fed. So in that window where you're eating, not where you're fasting, because during midlife, we opened more cortisol already. Overnight, if you've fasted, your body is already a little stressed after that. And if you exercise as well, exercise breaks down muscle. So we've got 3 strikes against you. You're out in any other sport. You're not then, when you refuel after your exercise, getting ahead. It's just like you're trying to repair the damage you just did. Think about that differently. And it's okay to cycle things. Maybe you have days where you fast a little bit longer, but those aren't your exercise days. When you're not stressing your body on those days, you're pampering yourself, slow and easy kinds of days. But the thing I do advocate is higher protein than most women have ever eaten before in their lives. When you sit down with the family at the table, you need that bigger piece of meat more than your teenage son does.
Incredible. How much protein are you recommending women get each day?
First of all, let me say this. I'm not a registered dietitian. So in 48 states in the United States, you really need to be to advocate any special meal plan or specifics for an individual. But based on the research and based on what Debra does, okay, the rule of thumb is now, for longevity's sake, we're looking at your ideal body weight. Where's your healthy body weight in pounds, in grams of protein per day? And that's if you're at that body weight. You want to divide it up as if it were a prescription medication. At least 30 grams of protein each time that you have a meal. It could be 30 or 40, or it could be 45 if you can eat it. Protein's very satiety-based, so you're going to feel full faster. You may not be able to eat all that, but if you can, it would be okay. And the point is, you want it spread regularly throughout the day. Like if I gave you a bottle of penicillin and I were a doctor, I said, take 3 of these, 1 with each meal. You wouldn't say, well, it's going to be more convenient for me to take them all at night. I'll just take them with dinner. But we sometimes do that with dinner. We don't eat much protein during breakfast. We may have a little or not at lunch, or we skip lunch, and then we have our big protein at dinner. That's actually not helping you hold on to muscle, and your bone also needs protein. If you ever learned, because I taught this is what we also thought, high protein diets, we thought back in the 90s, helped you excrete protein. So high protein diets were bad for bone, we thought. Hope you're not tuning in right now and you think this is the quote, okay? But we now know that bone is largely made of protein, and that your bone will benefit from a high protein diet as well. So for both reasons, you need it.
Do you have some creative advice on how to get that protein? What do you eat that are good protein sources?
Great question. Truly, I'm going to say great protein sources first. I'll give you a snapshot of what a day in the life is like for me. This was told to me by Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, one of the best experts in terms of protein science and muscle. If it runs, that's first. Like, that's the best protein. It's going to be the most protein and the best amino acid profile. And that's what you're looking for. And amino acids are like a New York skyline. There are 9 essential amino acids we have to eat every day, but every food has different amounts of them. New York skyline for those things that run, for those proteins that run. And then there's proteins that fly. And we're talking like, turkey and pheasant and those kinds of things. Still has all the essential amino acids, not quite as high a profile. And then if it swims, all your seafood and your fish, still high in protein, good sources, and sometimes other things too, like we know salmon for omega-3s, all good, but not quite as high, the essential amino acid profile. And then plant-based are going to be lower than that. And for a lot of midlife women, this is problematic because every protein source that you get that's plant-based almost is also high in carbohydrates. So you end up eating so many more calories, so many more carbohydrates to get in the protein in if you can, because they all have fiber in them. You get full much, much faster. It can be a challenge to do it that way.
Do you do any protein powders or anything like that to help supplement?
I do. You walked right into that. Flipping 50 has 2 protein powders.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, see, you set me right up. We do pea-based, plant-based protein. I also have one called the paleo-based. You don't have to be on a paleo diet, but it's hydrolyzed beef. So largely lots of collagen in it. It does have a full essential amino acid profile, but it's a little bit lower than, it's not like a steak, certainly. But a lot of people feel better on animal protein and like that option instead. And for the convenience sake, and I've been a smoothie girl since I was 30. I think I was training for my first marathon, and I would always come back from a run, start at a protein, and my body just likes that. Our bodies in general like routine with diversity. So it's not the same greens, it's not the same berries every day, it's not the same liquid source. You want to vary those things. Your body will like routine. Definitely I do. And if it's not for my breakfast, it is a post-workout shake because it's another easy, quick way and no excuses because you can do that in 2 minutes. You dump your dry ingredients, dump the liquid, you blur that, you're done walking out with your Go cup if you need to. There's no excuses. I don't have time to make breakfast. Oh, cut it out. Yes, you do.
Oh, I know. My goal is just not eating anything after dinner. If I can just not snack at night. But the brain fog that I get if I go too long without eating, I listen to my body.
Yeah.
I may do a smoothie when I'm like, oh, I need to get something in my body. That's a great meal substitute.
Whether you do it as a meal or it's the thing you break your fast with before a workout. Sometimes I'll just do a simple shake, which is just the protein powder and maybe unsweetened almond milk before a workout. And then an hour or so after the workout, I'm going to do either a regular meal, maybe it's time for lunch, or a smoothie, but with the works, right? With the greens and the fruit and the fiber and the healthy fat, as well as the protein, so that it also keeps you full for hours, just like anything else would.
I love that idea. And what I'll do is I'll put the name of your protein products in the show notes so people have access to that. I have to ask you, are there any new projects on the horizon that you're working on?
There is one, potentially 2. So we're actually going to be hosting a summit. And I'm not using that word because it makes me a little nauseous because there's so many of them. And no offense to all my friends who've hosted them. I'm calling it an online event. It is the only one that I know of where we're featuring exercise for midlife women. Exercise has been a part, I think, of many, many summits when talking about midlife women's health, but it's never been the central force. So we're talking about what's the science on holding on or preserving and gaining lean muscle? What's the science on bone and bone density? What's the science on exercise and brain health? And how do we do it? Like, what are the practical steps that we can do next? We're going to have a whole section on obstacles, overcoming obstacles, motivation. I have somebody talking about trauma, which a lot of people may have overlooked as a reason and are blaming themselves on laziness and motivation. And it may not be that, maybe something else. But also talking about chronic disease or long haul COVID and the effects of how do you train through that and get over it. We can give people the science and say, here's what you should do. But if they have every desire and intention to do the right thing and are still facing obstacles, I want to make sure we don't leave anybody out. So we're going to address those things too.
This sounds like a great event. When will you be launching this?
That will be live May 1st through the 7th of 2023.
Will people be able to get hold of recordings of that if they're not able to listen right then and there?
Absolutely. You can attend live for free. You can do the recordings for a nominal fee and have them forever, and some great prizes. A pass so that you know who's talking on what day and what topic, and making sure that you do tune in when you can. Absolutely. Thanks for asking.
That sounds great. I'm very excited about that. What are the names of your books?
You Still Got It, Girl, the After 50 Fitness Formula for Women, and Hot Not Bothered, 99 tips, daily flips, actually we call them, for mastering your metabolism before, during, and after menopause. And those are easy. Read a 2-minute chapter and put it down. And I've already got something I can do with my day-to-day to make it better.
How can listeners find you?
I'm at flipping50.com. That's the website, all spelled out, just words, no numbers. And then everywhere on social media, it's Flipping50TV, Flipping50 TV.
And that's where I found you.
Yes, exactly. And I say, what a great name for a podcast.
Oh, I know. Thank you. That's so nice. This was so motivating. You've really got my wheels turning about how I'm going to approach things going into 2023. Debra Atkinson, thank you so much for being here. This was so fun. Maybe we'll have to do this again. I say this a few times with my guests because there's a lot of meat on this bone we could chew off.
There's so much to talk about. Absolutely. I would love to come back. And thank you so much for having me and for what you're doing for all women who are listening.
Thank you, Debra. Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.